When you create a new project in Cinema 4D, the project settings will establish global values for your project. That is to say, values that will be used throughout your project. I have the Cinema 4D interface in front of me, and when you create a new document, you can have multiple documents open in Cinema 4D, but you can't have no documents open. So I've got an empty document right here, and the Attributes Manager, if I raise this window up here, is showing me the document settings. It defaults to showing you that when you don't have anything open or you don't have anything selected. And so the project settings show me some key information about my project. I'm going to enlarge this window by hovering my mouse over this double line here and dragging to the left so that I can see everything in that window. So the project settings show me things like my document scale. The 3D world is really completely relative. There is no up or down or left or right, and also the objects can be any size. I can make a cube, and that cube could be a mile wide or it can be a millimeter wide. It's really up to you. If you're an architect, you may want to work in real-world values, so you can change those values to be feet or inches, or millimeters or centimeters or kilometers if you wanted to. The document scale, though, I generally always leave at 1 because I don't want to mess with that size relative to anything else that I'm working on. I always want to make sure that I'm working on a project and multiple projects that my document scale stays consistent throughout that process. The frames per second control how many frames we're animating at. Generally speaking, video is animated at 30 frames per second. There are some variations on that within the HD spectrum, and also if you're doing film, that might be 24 frames per second. Once again, you can change that right here. The minimum and maximum time relate to this preview range that we see down here. And you can control those here, or you can set them down here in this window. It really doesn't matter. Level of detail relates to how much information is Cinema 4D giving you in this scene. And you can maximize your playback speed by reducing the level of detail overall. I'm going to normally leave it at 100% unless you're working on a very complex scene and my computer is really chugging trying to reproduce it, then I'll turn that down. When I render, it'll still render at 100% detail, so I'll still get the full quality. It's just for what you're working with in the viewport. Now, the default object color and view clipping and things, I'm going to leave alone. There is one button I want to talk very much about, and that's the linear workflow. The linear workflow is brand new to Cinema 4D version 12, and it's one of the reasons that the Cinema 4D R12 files cannot be opened by previous versions of Cinema 4D. So if you have a file that you're creating in Cinema 4D in version 12 and you want to pass it off to someone in 11.5, you can't do that. You're going to have to export your objects out a different way. But Cinema 4D R12 can open any previous version of Cinema 4D. So if you have a version 5 file, R12 will be able to open it. If you have a version 10 file, same thing, you can open it no problem. The linear workflow I'll talk about when we get into the rendering and compositing chapters later on in the series, but it's a very important step in getting more accurate color for your renderings. Under the info, there's a lot of information you can input in the file for things like author and copyright, and to help people that might use your file identify you, and also to help them understand what's going on in the file. You can type in notes and things and have that show up for anybody who wants to use your file on a later date. The dynamics field controls how the dynamics engine behaves, and we'll talk more about the dynamics engine in another chapter. The project settings are the place to start when first beginning a new project.